Then hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor Rebush. That's Phil McKenzie.
Hello.
Wow, making up for my stilted intro with the triple hello. Or should I say the double hello and the single low. Welcome to Heavy Hands. We had an off week from UFC events, at the very least, last weekend, which made perfect room for another fight that we are going to discuss on today's show. Before I tell you about that, I will tell you that there is, yes, an Apex card around the corner. Flyweight's in the main event. I don't hate that. Nicolau, Alex Perez, genuinely good and interesting fight. Probably not one that's going to get anybody interested, but the UFC's dug their own grave at this point, as they always have with flyweight. People aren't going to care about it because you put them in a main event once in a blue moon, and otherwise they are in the very first fight on the Apex card. So no shit, nobody knows who they are. But trust me when I say Nicolau and Alex Perez are both good, interesting fighters. The rest of the card is spotty, which isn't to say there aren't any interesting fights on it. As is so often the case with these Apex cards, there are quite a few interesting fighters here, but the matchups they're in aren't really going to do it for you, for the most part. That being said, we have Ariane Lipski versus Karine Silva is a cool fight. Two fighters, one an up-and-comer, the other a surprising comeback prospect. And Ariane Lipski has been looking shockingly good for a minute now. Jonathan Pearce, David Onama we might talk about. Ronnie Yahya, Victor Henry could talk about. Tim Means, Uroš Medic we could talk about. We're going to get to whatever we decide of that smattering there after we talk about Nicolau and Alex Perez, and then we're going to talk about last weekend's main event, which was a boxing match between Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney. And this was one of the most beautifully stupid fights I have seen in a long time. And it's
good to know that boxing can still contribute stupidity, because I feel like MMA's had too much of a monopoly on really silly looking fights for a while.
Yeah, no, the whole lead up, if you paid any attention to it, was stupid and disconcerting, and including one of the fighters missing weight while drinking a beer on the scale. The fight itself did not disappoint if you paid any attention at all to the lead up. So we're going to have a good time talking about that. But first, you're UFC fans, most of you. You're ingrates. You're cretins. And because of that, we're going to start off with the flyweights. Nicolau, Alex Perez. As you said before, Phil, strange to think that we've actually seen Alex Perez fight recently, and that he's now booked for another.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that makes you maybe want to expect him to turn up. And I'm not going to. I'm still willing to, as before, couch all analysis in the realms of the hypothetical. In that, I still think the general bet should be that Alex Perez doesn't make it to this fight and it's someone else. In fact, are there any other flyweights on this card?
No.
Is the world coming together to ensure that? Because obviously the problem with flyweights is, from a booking standpoint, is that they are at the they're at the bottom of the weight classes, which means that if you need to make a short notice replacement with if you need to make a short notice replacement, you can at least get someone to not cut weight from an upper
right. There's no straw weights you can have to just go up and wait on short notice.
Yep. Which means, there's no available replacements for this one when Alex Perez does not turn up for whatever reason. gypsy curse.
I don't think you're allowed to say that anymore, Phil.
Really?
Yeah.
Traveler curse? I don't know.
Yeah, we call them pikeys over here. Why is that not acceptable over there?
No, 100% acceptable.
Okay, good. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. It just feels so easy.
You're going to find out. It's like the French people. You're going to find out that there's actually an enormous traveler community that also listens to this podcast. Yeah. And they're going to be furious with you.
Let me be clear. It was easy shock value for me to say it because being an American, we don't have Irish travelers here. It means nothing to me. It's sort of like in Thailand, how people will have like a Hitler t-shirt. You know, or you'll go to like Hitler ice cream in Thailand. That's how it is for me. I mean nothing by it. If we do have Irish travelers listening, I love you and I respect you. And your proud bare knuckle boxing traditions. Please don't beat me up. Yeah. I mean, fair enough to expect Alex Perez not to show up. I suppose, we're going to have to talk assuming that he will for there to be any analysis here at all. What did you make of Nicolau? I will say is I think a pretty known quantity. We've seen some good performances, we've seen some lackluster ones, but all of them he is not really doesn't come across as much of a game planner or a guy who is a different version of himself on different nights. You kind of know what you're going to get. Alex Perez, much more of an unknown, especially given the fact that he has only fought once in the last 2 years, I want to say, with a lot of cancellations and weight misses and injuries and yada yada to account for that. So what did you make of his one performance and what do you expect him to look like here?
I thought his performance against Mikhaev was... I mean, it was such a weird thing from both guys, because I thought in some ways they both looked like better than what I was expecting. I think Perez's kind of takedown defense held up very well in general. Mm-hmm. They were both like more assertive. I think Mikhaev in particular was more assertive than I'd necessarily thought he might be, in terms of, actually trying to set things up with strikes, and which eventually allowed him to get away with the bad parts of it, which is that he won stretches of the fight off dropping to his butt and getting into scrambles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I thought, Perez's wrestling looked very good.
Certainly.
But yeah, it was just the fact that he sort of allowed himself... This is the thing that makes him so difficult to figure out, is that he's in some ways such a coherent fighter. Like, he's can handle himself on the feet, he's big for his weight class, he's got multiple tools at range, he's a very good wrestler, he's very powerful and that other kind of stuff. But he's just not mentally all that, he doesn't have clutch.
No.
Just cannot find ways to winnable matchups against people who should be on his tier, which means that he just ends up in a tier lower, which is the tier that conveniently enough Mateus Nicolau operates in.
Yeah,
because Mateus Nicolau is broadly sort of similar to the champion Pantoja. He's a counterpuncher with a really functional wrestling game, and who can, he's a genuinely good grappler. He's in many ways a craftier and more technical counterpuncher than Pantoja is, but he just doesn't have the horsepower and he doesn't have the durability.
Yeah, and there's some stylistic wrinkles from Nicolau that we can talk about in a minute. I'll say about Perez, in the past, the read on him was always that he was a bully. Mm-hmm. That he needed to get momentum on people immediately, and that you could just sort of expect him to fall out of the fight after that. This fight with Mikhaev complicates that impression a little bit. Because, in fact, as you might expect for a guy who was certainly rusty, and it's hard to tell the extent to which that qualifies the entirety of this performance, but as you might expect, he loses the first round. He's just like not bringing the level of intensity. He's surprised by a couple of Mokaev's takedowns. It's not until round 2 that he starts like really effortlessly shutting them all down and also getting his strikes off. So instantly it's not a bully performance, right? Because he has to come back to put himself in pole position. But then round 3 of that fight is so very strange because everything about it that is not things you actually score in a fight tells you that Alex Perez is winning. He's stuffing all these ugly, desperate takedowns, and he has Mokaev so clearly uncomfortable and gassed throughout the entire round. It is Mokaev who ends up looking like the bully who went way too hard too early and couldn't get it done. Except that Perez spends the whole round walking him down, shutting down his takedowns, and landing nothing. Literally, it is a round that Mokaev wins because he lands like 5 clean strikes. It's such a strange, like that almost fits back into the Alex Perez is a bully paradigm because that looks like fights like he had.
It wasn't,
or rather his success tapers off. It was just weird because he found that success in round 2 rather than round 1. And then he was clearly still feeling good. He just like forgot to punch. He just forgot to score. He won the body language.
That's what it felt like to me. Is that like I said, is that he just he doesn't have the insatiable drive to win that some fighters just have. And that he just lost track of where he was, of where he was in the fight and what was actually happening. Yeah,
lost track of time. He didn't seem to understand the urgency of his. And the thing, it wasn't even that urgent. Maybe it's just that he felt he was winning, as it feels watching it that he's winning. It's only with cold clinical analysis that you realize he hasn't actually scored. He's just been physically and mentally bullying Mokaev the whole round. But it certainly feels like he's in control. He is in control.
Yeah, but Mokaev has tremendous clutch. He just doesn't... Yeah. He often has ugly fights, but he just doesn't lose them. You know, the one where he was injured and then he still pulled out like a finish, even though he doesn't generally finish people. He's one of those people where he's just always trying really hard to win. Yeah. And it just felt like Perez, he just got lost. He just got lost in the fight. I mean, that's again, he's one of these guys, I think, like, you know, Rob Font or wherever, where he just gets, I think he just likes training. Yeah. He likes training and, like, doing MMA. But he doesn't necessarily, have that gear that says, and, you know, he's good at it, but he doesn't necessarily has that gear that says, I have to win this no matter what. And so, yeah, that's the kind of thing which can lead to him, you know, if someone comes after him and they're like Joe Benavidez and they're like, I absolutely am winning this, and they come with just pure ferocity, then he folds because he doesn't really want to that much. And similarly, if someone's like, I'm going to try and game the scoring system by just sort of shooting from my butt every now and again, and then, you know, doing the Ryan Hall, sort of a punchier version of the Ryan Hall game plan of just pulling guard whenever they get near you and sprinkling in the occasional strike. Then he just doesn't keep up with it. He can't find a way to win. Yeah, which makes him a very tricky person to pick fights for. Because you basically have to be saying... I mean, again, I think, like Rob Font, he's someone where if he matches up perfectly with someone, to the extent that he can just do what he does and enjoy it, he's going to absolutely thrash them. Yeah. Like poor Formiga. Yeah. But if he doesn't, I think there's just always going to be the potential for like a crack to open up.
Yeah, there's just a lot of room to find a way to win against Perez. I will say on the surface, this is a potentially pleasing style matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nicolau will have an opponent who will have to walk him down and try to create exchanges. And if Nicolau doesn't have that, his fights can be horribly, horribly boring. Because he is really, really a back foot counterpuncher. So I like that element to this. I assume Perez is going to pressure him. I got to assume, based on, I mean, the other thing was hard to say about Perez's fight with Mikhaev is I feel his striking used to be better than that. I think I do think he might have just been rusty and wasn't quite like feeling the rhythm and timing of the exchanges the way he used to. When he was a lot more active. So maybe that'll be a little better this time. If the striking he showed in that fight is indicative.
I also think he was, one of the reasons why his takedown defense was good was that he was so, I think his team probably rightly looked at Mikhaev and said, this guy doesn't have anything to offer on the feet. Which meant that he was just constantly trying to sprawl on takedowns, which, as it turned out, didn't have any drive on them because Mikhaev was just falling over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and again, it was like Maynard Ryan Hall, is that he just sort of came forward and he's well coached. He's not necessarily, when a unique situation pops up in front of him, which is to say someone who just drops down on their butt the instant that he gets anywhere near them or tries to throw anything. He just couldn't figure out how to deal with it. A more instinctive fighter would have just started throwing front kicks or something.
Yeah.
And just run in with knees.
He reads to me as a guy with perhaps a one-track mind. I think you're right. He probably just felt he was sort of fulfilling his win condition in round 3 by just killing all the wrestling. Which he did.
Yep.
Crushed Mikhaev's takedown attempts in that round. Every one of them. And wasn't getting hurt or hit super hard in return. He just had to eat a jab now and then. So he probably was just I'm winning. This is the thing we prepared to do to win this fight. I just have to stop all of his grappling. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe that'll be less of a concern. As you said, Nicolau does go for takedowns. He uses a lot of movement and has excellent timing, and he will use that timing to hit a reactive double leg on somebody. But it is not the absolute staple of his game, as it is for Mikhaev. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's reason enough to assume that Perez will come in a little more aggressive with the hands. If he does, there is slim potential we could be in for a very fun fight.
Yeah.
Because Nicolau...
It's one of those ones that, the more I think about it, I think it is a genuinely good, well-matched fight. Like I said, I think these guys are pretty much on the exact same tier.
Yeah.
They are fighters who are just very close to being elite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, for Nicolau, I mentioned I have some issues with his style. In fact, these are issues that I think are going to come up in the next segment when we talk about Devin Haney. Nicolau he's not always like this, but he, like Perez, can get suckered into a just keep doing the same thing over and over kind of mode. Nicolau can very easily trick himself into thinking that counterpunching is when you let the guy come forward and then make him miss and then hit him. And that's the whole game.
Yep.
And, listeners and readers of my work will know that I'm big on the concept of initiative. And you will hear, even if people don't use that word, you will hear this from old boxing heads when they tell you the real art of counterpunching is to make the guy throw the punches you want to counter. You can't just wait. If you wait, you're liable to get set up because the other guy has initiative. You have to dictate when the exchanges are happening. If an exchange starts and it's not one that you're in a position to counter, or you don't have the read on what you're going to counter, then you reset and you do it again. That is how you use your like evasive footwork, is to reset so that you can start the exchange again. And then as that exchange, you're building up to that moment, you have to be feeding the other guy things to respond to. You need to get, even if he's pressuring you, you need to get reactions out of him. That's initiative. So you need feints, you need jabs. You can use footwork to gain an initiative at a certain point. Usually not right away, but as the fight goes on and you get a really good read on what the guy does, then you can start sort of playing the game of, I'm just going to step to this side because he always throws the right hand when I do. And I know it's coming and I'm going to fire back. But sometimes Nicolau's entire approach to counterpunching is to just move his feet. The guy comes in and he tries to guess what they're going to throw. And he's pretty good at it. But it is just ripe for exploitation by an aggressive opponent. So it could be a problem against Perez. Perez is not the most imaginative striker. Let's put it that way. I don't think Nicolau is going to end up in terrible trouble trying to guess what's coming at him and responding, and Perez is plenty hittable. Nicolau has an excellent counter left hook, but really he's a good counterpuncher in general. Throws good short combinations and then resets and does it all over again. But it has gotten him into trouble. It got him into trouble against Brandon Royval, who came at him with just a confusing variety of offensive threats, and Nicolau ended up thinking, oh, this is my moment to counter, and ducking directly into a knee. Because he wasn't doing anything to, he didn't do any of the groundwork to know what Royval was going to throw, nor did he lead that exchange by getting Royval to throw. Royval just came forward and threw at him, and Nicolau stood there and let it happen. That's not good counterpunching, like conceptually, strategically. I do expect him to win this fight, because I think Perez is a pretty concerted pressure fighter, but as I said, not a very imaginative one. It's like...
Yeah.
Hooks, jabs and hooks and low kicks. And it's pretty much all left, right, or low kick, low kick, low kick, low kick.
Yep.
Shouldn't be that difficult to time.
Yeah. I think another one of the things that makes Perez, we've talked a bit about this before, is a sort of somewhat fragile, is that he's another one of these fighters without like a lot of built-in defense. And like you said, like Nicolau, he does at least like angle off. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get stuck moving in one direction.
Nope.
He does. So he does actually have some defense. But yeah, Perez is mostly, I think, someone who is a huge flyweight, which has contributed to some of his weight misses. And yeah, another one of these fighters who just really, really needs that in order to be able to get you thinking about whether it's a jab or a low kick, because his concessions to defense are mostly to back up with his with the double forearms up. Mm. And yeah, I think it's Nicolau's ability to counterpunch in combination. Yeah. I think, which really makes me favor him more. If he was throwing one at a time, I would perhaps look for Perez to be able to get up on attritional damage, just be able to like jab and low kick him a bunch and maybe draw strikes out of him. But I just don't see Nicolau not chasing him out of the pocket with like 2 or 3 punches every now and again and just dinging him.
Yeah. Yeah, and while Nicolau has been KO'd or TKO'd like 3 or 4 times, he isn't mentally fragile the way that Perez can sometimes seem to be, because he has been in some against really aggressive pressure fighters, he has been in some really crazy back and forth fights in his career. When the style matchup is right. I'm trying to remember the one pre-UFC. Maybe it was Bruno Mesquita, where he got his... No, that was an early UFC fight with the Japanese necktie. I can't remember. Anyway, I've seen a few fights at Perez's, is the point, where the opponent has been really, really aggressive, but hasn't caught his chin enough to knock him out, and he is down to scrap. Certainly, he will fight very hard if the pressure is brought to him. His problem as a slightly lower than elite tier fighter is that if the pressure isn't brought to him, he's not going to create winning chances on his own very well. But I just have to take Nicolau here, I think.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where I really wanted to pick. I think I was thinking I was going to pick Perez when I was coming in, just because, Nicolau is also he likes to box, and just a concerted low kicker is often a real trouble for people who just want to throw hands, especially if they can mix it up with the wrestling. And yeah, I think that all might be the case still to some extent, but yeah, it's just the fact that he's quite hard to hit when he's on his, when he's in full defense mode, and just Perez just is not.
Yep.
And I think that even if he can start piling up low kicks, eventually he's just going to get Nicolau's just going to come back at him and just deck him.
Yeah. I mean, again, mostly through lack of trying, but he did actually get outstruck by Muhammad Mokaev in a round. So,
yep.
Simply by being hittable and not throwing back.
That is not. Yes.
If he had thrown back,
not something you ever want to say.
If he had thrown, he probably would have won, just as a matter of course, because Mokaev was panicked and gassed, but he didn't, and his hitability lost him the round.
Yep.
So, yep, man, look at this note from the Wikipedia page for this event. This is so indicative to me of the thing I've been complaining about with these Apex cards. A lightweight bout between James Lontop, or maybe it's Lontop. Is he Welsh? There's two L's. James Lontop.
Could be.
And Lando Venata was scheduled for the event. However, Venata pulled out for unknown reasons and was replaced by Gabriel Green. If Gabriel Green and Lando Venata were both available, why didn't you book that fight? That sounds fun. Who the fuck is James Lontop? He's some Contender Series guy, surely, but God, they have the fighters available. They're just not putting them in good fights. They're just not trying to put them in good fights.
Well, I think it's just that they're matching up moderately known people with unknown people in the hope that the unknown people can become known. It's not working. It's just making people turn off.
Yeah.
But
they want them to become known, but not too known.
No, not too known. Just known enough so that they can repeat this process, a few years down the line.
Yeah, 2 years later, James Lontop can fight Barnaby Wallace, another guy you've never heard of.
He is a hot new prospect coming out of
Illinois. Barnaby Wallace, keep your eyes on this kid. All right. Let's take a break there. Both of us picking Matthews Nicolau. When we come back, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia. If you are not much of a boxing fan, you don't watch lots of boxing, I implore you to watch this fight and listen to us talk about it. You will not feel that you have wasted your time. It's a good one. We're going to talk about it after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about some boxing. First of all, I assume most of the people listening will have an idea of the lead up to this fight. But if you didn't pay any attention, if you somehow escaped it, you should know that Ryan Garcia spent the lead up to this bout going publicly.
Okay, so we got to explain who Ryan Garcia is, right?
Okay, yeah, fine. You were going to offer something?
Who's Ryan Garcia?
Prompting me to explain who Ryan Garcia
yeah, I'm expecting you to do it. You're the boxing person. I'm not going to say anything about this.
Ryan Garcia is a young star of boxing. I believe he was maybe 17 or 18 when he started pro, and has just, first of all, he's handsome. That helps. People often forget that when they talk about why a guy is inexplicably famous. Well, Ryan Garcia is a good-looking young man with nice hair, so that's part of it. The other part is that he's very exciting. He has really fast, powerful hands, in particular a devastating left hook. And this led to a ton of KOs on his way up. Then things started to get a little ropey for him when he got to like the lesser world title stage. He had a fight with, I believe, a British boxer named Luke Campbell, who dropped Garcia once or maybe twice when he was doing his goofy bad shoulder roll defense that he likes to do, even though it seems to have no connection to any part of the rest of his game.
It's a little generous to call what he does a shoulder roll.
Yeah, he hides behind the shoulder and
turns his back on his opponent
and
cowers.
He is a fast, powerful, exciting fighter who's capable of hurting people at any moment, and is very tough. He's got a lot of like fighting spirit, but his game is really dysfunctional. That's Ryan Garcia. And he was recently, quote unquote, exposed in his fight with Gervonta Davis. That was like his big, real test against a world-class fighter. And we might have talked about that one on the show. I can't recall, or maybe I wrote an article about it. And yeah, Davis is a quite slick defensive fighter, a southpaw counterpuncher, and also a huge puncher. And he knocked Garcia out. He made Garcia look quite bad, in fact, because Davis like has good footwork and good defense, and Garcia just stumbled into his punches over and over. So that's Ryan Garcia. Devin Haney, we did talk about on the show. We talked about him with Kyle, who was really just feeling his oats after this, because I was defending Devin Haney. You know what Kyle said to me, Phil? You saw the exchange. He's like, oh, is he, oi, Connor, bruv. Is he still good now, mate? He said to me. And I was like, oh, so you picked Ryan Garcia to win? Well, no, but that's what I thought, bitch. You know, trying to call me out, for defending Devin Haney. You thought he was going to win too. In fact, everybody thought Devin Haney was going to win. He had a win over Regis Prograis, a win over Vasily Lomachenko, he had a win over Jorge Linares a few years ago, all much bigger wins than any of the people Ryan Garcia has ever beaten. And he just has the feeling of a far more technical, more sort of classic American boxer, you know? An operator.
Yeah. All of that stuff about, Devin Haney is the more proven fighter, the more technical fighter, and so on. That would be something which would deter you from probably picking Ryan Garcia, even if you were thinking that he was going to land. He might be able to land punches. He might be able to expose Haney's chin a bit. Might be able to perhaps overpower him. But given what happened in the last week of the fight, which was when he was when he missed weight, when he drank a beer on the scales, when he was seen at like clubs the week of the fight. You know, that would make literally anyone turn away from him as like a proposition for winning.
Yeah.
I think, there's so much of when we talk about fights of people, having pop psychology analyses of the fighters, when all the stuff where they like see the stare downs and they're like, ooh, this guy looked like he was real intimidated. Or what's this guy's head at after, this particular thing that's happened to him. And 99% of the time, it is absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
But if someone is obviously detonating in the way that Ryan Garcia was in the run-up to this fight,
not just we're talking like getting into
never pick them unless they were, unless it was a complete squash match.
Yeah, I mean we're talking. He's like getting into it with fans, like at every event. Like he just seemed to be losing his shit. Mm-hmm. Like truly having a troubling mental breakdown. I literally decided on a whim to watch this event with a feeling of guilt and shame. I was like, this man shouldn't be fighting. I was not the only person with that sentiment, not by a long shot. And I don't think it was fake. I really don't. I don't think, here's the thing. I think people tend to vastly overestimate the ability of other people to put on public performances like that. Like when somebody is putting on a performance, it's like Colby Covington. You can tell it's fake. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It feels flimsy. It feels like somebody with no acting ability acting. Most people can't just for like weeks on end just pretend to be crazy. It's just not like, I just don't, even in just the slim view you have of their antics, through like social media and media appearances. I just don't think most people are actually capable of doing that. And I think the real craziness, like I said, I made the John Jones comparison, lies in the like two sides of Ryan Garcia thing that was going on throughout all of this, where like a third of the time he was talking about like changing his training camp and like taking care of his career and how dedicated he was to boxing and everything. And then 2/3 of the time he's just going nuts. Like, I don't think he's faking. I think he is not particularly sure who he is, maybe. Like I said, I think this happens just when somebody very young becomes very famous very quickly. But, yeah, I don't think he was faking. We make this point because, as you may have guessed if you haven't seen the fight, and again, go watch it, Ryan Garcia ended up winning. He didn't just end up winning. He knocked Devin Haney down, I think, 3 times? 4? Maybe 4. And there were several notable occasions of him hurting Garcia that didn't result in a knockdown, aside from those. Yeah, for all intents and purposes, he thrashed Devin Haney. Except for long portions of the fight where he did nothing.
Yeah. That is also the way of like the way the fight looked as it was starting out was really classically what you might expect from a fight like this.
Yeah.
Which is that, or at least if sort of what you might expect as the best case scenario for if you were like a Ryan Garcia fan, which is that he comes out and he almost immediately hurts Devin Haney.
Yep.
But then unfortunately you can't put him away, again, if you're a Ryan Garcia fan, and then he just goes, and he just starts getting controlled very steadily. And that at that point, that is when you are sort of expecting the fight to just be this for the rest of it.
Yep.
And then it just isn't.
No.
I mean, it's one of the most bizarre experiences I think I've had in a long time watching this fight.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's just inexplicable to me. The fight itself, just the build-up to it, everything about it is just one of the weirdest combat sports experiences I've had for some time.
It was one of the silliest goddamn fights I have seen in a very long time. It was, like Devin Haney. So Garcia goes nuts right away, unloads a bunch of punches. I believe it's a left hook. He just instantly staggers Devin Haney with a left hook. And then Haney collects himself. He gets on the jab. He gets on the pressure, which was evidently the game plan. I hate when that boxing productions have a guy go and talk to the corner while he's trying to corner his fighter. Mm-hmm. I much prefer the way the UFC does it. Just give us a little glimpse at their corner advice. That's cool. I'm happy to see the corner and hear them, but don't try to talk to him when he's trying to focus on the fight and figure out what he's going to say to his guy after this round. But in those couple, they're never good interviews either, by the way, because the guy's distracted. In that moment when he's sort of spitting out half sentences because he's trying to pay attention, he does explain that, like, yeah, they need to pressure with the jab. That's basically the game plan. And that's what Haney starts doing even in the first round. After the scary moment, which was in like the first 30 seconds. He then starts to pressure and starts to jab. And Garcia seems to just go away. Ryan Garcia does not have good, like, boxer's footwork. So when he is actually stuck on the back foot, he is stuck there. Doesn't appear to have a good way, of like, he's not sticking and moving, you know? He's not like finding angles to sneak in his jab. He's just like on his bike. And Haney even starts to turn up the pressure a little bit, which is what I wanted him to do for this fight. I was like, you should go out there and try to thrash Ryan Garcia. You should do what Andre Ward did to Kovalev. Oh, this is the bigger, scarier, harder hitting guy. I'm going to get in his face and break him. And I think he showed, like, he had at least some of the skills required to do that due to the absolutely massive gaps in Ryan Garcia's back foot boxing game. And in like round 5 of this fight, he's finding the left hook. He's finding the overhand right off of the body jab. He seems to be putting together a pretty decent, like, assault that's building. Which is something Haney has done. It's something I defended in him when we talked about him with Kyle. That I was like, well, you get to like round 9, 10, 11, 12 of a fight that he's been coolly dominating. He does tend to start throwing more combinations and actually putting some heat on his opponent. And then Ryan Garcia comes out at the start of round 6 and just goes ballistic for like 30 seconds. He's just like, no, he just starts throwing like 8 punches in a row. Or more, just unloading. And he hits Haney again. And Haney's aggressiveness kind of goes away. He goes back to the pressure a bit throughout the fight, but mostly all he can do is like land one jab. And I gotta take back the whole, whatever I might have said about Haney's reputation as a punch and clutch fighter. Mm-hmm. He is, in fact, this fight, if nothing else did, certainly revealed to me that he is, in fact, so much in need of the clinch after he punches that one little move to an angle, one good counter from Ryan Garcia absolutely fucks up his whole game. There are many, many sequences in this fight where Haney will like slip a shot and immediately try to drive in off of that to smother. And Garcia just takes a step back and Haney is left. He like pops his head up. He's not looking at Ryan Garcia because he's looked down at the floor to get under the punch. And his both arms are out like reaching to grab onto something and he just gets drilled. He got caught in that transitional moment of trying to clinch so much in this fight. And he was not in good positions. This is the other thing. Ryan Garcia's outfighting footwork might be bad and left him susceptible to Haney's pressure. what I realized watching this is that Devin Haney's pocket footwork is actually terrible.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually terrible. He couldn't seem to attack Garcia with combinations without smothering himself, even when he wasn't, I think, actively looking for the clinch. When he moved his head, his feet were just like stuck in mud, which it's a problem if you have a really head movement forward like style of defense. You can get like, I think of like Lomachenko versus Rigondeaux. You get guys who will, trigger your slip or whatever and then just like run circles around you. Haney is very susceptible to that. And I have to say, as much as most of this fight I think was Devin Haney making mistakes and looking bad, Garcia actually was doing, when they were in the pocket, he was the one like taking the small steps, adjusting his feet, finding the angles to keep his punches landing. And Devin Haney did not have the ability to do that. Once he was in, his feet were just stuck. Really, really dreadful footwork in the pocket. And never was that more clear, Phil, than when Ryan Garcia many, many times just turned his back on Devin Haney.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, it's not a shoulder roll. He's not.
It's a very generous interpretation. Yeah, it's just turning his back.
It's a shoulder flop.
He's
not like picking off a shot with his shoulder as like using it as like a guard or a parry. He just, I don't know what he's thinking when he does it. Haney just comes in and you can see it. It's like he's just like, okay, I'm going to do this now, and he just goes into this absurd shell and just turns away. And Haney, at a certain point, realized he could just slam right hands into his exposed ribs over and over, which is cool. I give Haney credit for that. Even though Garcia was complaining that they were shots to his back, which he was presenting.
I mean, yeah.
Which he was presenting.
Like, yes, either you can be penalized for turning your back,
or you get hit in the back.
Yes.
First, they were mostly legal shots. They were right under the ribs. But you're turning your back. But they both did this shit, though. Haney in the clinches, instead of getting like good head position and trying to angle in, he turns away and gets hit in the back of the head and in the side of the face by shots he can't see coming. They both were just in terrible, terrible positions in the pocket in this fight. What was really frustrating was that Haney, he found those right hands, but there are other moments where, like Garcia's in front of him, his back is turned, he's hunched over, he's not even looking at Haney, and Haney can't figure out what to do. Garcia is just standing in place, looking the other way, and Haney can't find any angles. Like, just take a step to the side. He's not looking at you. You don't even have to set it up anymore. Just to make a move and then hit him from a better angle. But that is the shocking thing about Ryan Garcia's hilarious shoulder flop defense, is that it worked. It worked so much in this fight. The only solution to it that Haney found were the right hands to the ribs.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Again, it's just an inexplicable one, because I can understand the arguments, like the rationales for why this kind of thing happened. You know, because in some ways it's a story of things like how much weight classes matter, even in, even the more narrowly defined weight classes in boxing as opposed to MMA, and even given the fact that it's a less, although I guess with Devin Haney perhaps not so much, but a less wrestling and grappling based sport, where you wouldn't expect weight classes to have as much of an impact.
Yeah.
Because, but it is inexplicable to me to then think that there's just like even despite weight class differences, that there is a lineage going from like Basil Lomachenko losing to Haney, who then loses to Garcia.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, Garcia is the biggest one, and Lomachenko is by some way the smallest, but can it really be explained just with that? Just with the fact that certain styles just fall apart immediately under the pressure of higher weight class power, or just not being able to push people around as much.
Yeah.
But that is the bizarre thing, because the fight is telling you two completely opposing things. Because on the one hand, it's telling you that boxing is a sport of absolute inches. It is telling you that the optimization of styles and techniques and approaches and so on can change dramatically, across relatively minimal, weight class changes and things like that. But on the other hand, it's telling you that Ryan Garcia can just get drunk, party, turn up, and fight genuinely not particularly well.
No, he's not a particularly good boxer.
Beat someone who's just an inarguably more accomplished fighter.
Yeah. No, this is the thing. This is all I was saying in the lead up, on Twitter. I was like, Ryan Garcia is just not a very good boxer. And you can watch the middle 4 or 5 rounds of this fight after the first. He doesn't look like a good boxer. Shit, he doesn't look like a good boxer in the rounds that he's winning after that. He's just hitting. His combinations some of them were pretty nice. Like I said, he knows how to set up one punch with another. Offensively, he's very potent, and he sort of has a game that understands how to make those punches effective. And I got to give him credit for actually having some footwork in the pocket. Like I said, there were a lot of moments where Haney was just trying to rush in to grab hold of him, and Garcia just didn't let him and just nailed him when they were really close. But overall, this fight did not demonstrate good boxing ability from Ryan Garcia. Quite the opposite. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. I mean, yeah, Garcia missed weight. He's also just bigger than Devin Haney even without that. That was clear in the ring. Haney has been a lightweight throughout his career. This was up at super lightweight, just his second fight up there. Maybe part of it was just psychological. He was just intimidated. I mean, he get clipped right away when he was still cold getting into the fight. Maybe that affected him. I don't know, but I think I really do think there were some technical things exposed here. Things that more attentive people who have watched more of Devin Haney than me, already picked up on, but which this one really laid bare for me. That Haney, he doesn't have footwork in the pocket. He doesn't have the footwork to connect his punches together. That's probably more responsible for the fact that he is not a noted combination puncher than any psychological thing. That he really just doesn't seem to know how to continue advancing his position to keep the punches flowing, which Garcia did.
Yeah.
And then his defense too, there were also just some conceptual things he did horribly wrong, where there were so many times when he would just be standing in front of Garcia. There's a bit of a turn-taking element to Haney's game, which got him in trouble here. He just couldn't sustain the pressure that when it was on was really effective. Even before he got hurt again at the start of, I think it was round 6, he had kind of let up on the feinting and the jabbing and there were 3 rounds right in that window there where he was looking really sharp, locked in. And it looked like Garcia was just getting completely outboxed. But even before that, he kind of just took his foot off the gas and didn't build on that pressure in any way. In fact, he just sort of relented. And then that led to a bunch of scenarios where he was just standing in front of Garcia being like what I talked about with Nicolau before. I'm not going to do anything to get a reaction out of you. I'm just going to wait for you to throw and then try to slickly defend everything. And he got fucking run over whenever he did that. repeatedly.
Yeah.
Pushed back in a straight line, trying to use head movement to meet every one of 6 combination punches in a row. You're not James Toney, dude. And even if you were James Toney, you'd be firing counters. I think you could count the number of actual counter punches Devin Haney threw off of his defense in this fight on one hand. It was just a strategically horrible fight from Devin Haney. Like, he didn't do a good job of applying the strategy, the game plan that he came in with, except for a couple of rounds. And then the style that he was forced into was just conceptually not there. It was just built to let Ryan Garcia boss him around and set him up.
Yeah. It's my turn for offense, or it's your turn for offense.
The first shot
my
that
offense is one and done. And yeah, I mean, you just can't. I guess it is just partially just a size and weight class thing. You can't do that with someone who's both bigger than you, but also has blinding hand speed and tremendous power, no matter how many other flaws they might necessarily have.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it. It's a conceptual failing, which is just really laid bare when the stakes are raised. You can just get away with it a lot better against less dangerous fighters. Even better, less dangerous fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's such a great example of that. The first knockdown of the fight. Haney he has already sort of relented the pressure, and Garcia is firing combinations at him, and he tries 2 1-2s in a row. And Haney's defense in response to them is not particularly good. Like, Garcia was able to land a lot of like chopping downward right hands because Haney didn't actually he didn't put himself in good positions. He was like turning away and looking down as he was trying to slip these shots and like over anticipating. So Garcia was able to read his defense before he had actually gotten to the good position. But he deals with 2 1-2s in a row, nothing particularly clean. And then they reset. This is in the span of like 15 seconds. They reset. He's standing in front of Garcia doing nothing, just standing there. And Garcia sticks out a jab. And you can look at Haney watching Garcia's right hand when the left hook drills him on the fucking chin and puts him down. That is bad boxing. That is initiative. That's the importance of initiative, folks. You don't just stand there and say, I'm going to guess what you're going to do. Because even a guy as dumb and insane as Ryan Garcia will be like, well, I did this 2 times in a row. Maybe rule of 3s, I'll do something different next time. And then you get clocked because you were standing there waiting. You didn't give him any. It's a zero-sum game. You have to make him deal with stuff. You have to threaten him. Or you just let him set you up. Terrible from Haney. Terrible decision making. I'm off the train, folks, okay? Don't tell Kyle, who we're going to have on in a couple weeks. We're going to have him on in a couple weeks to talk about Fury Usyk. But yeah. He didn't pick him either, That's all I got.
No one could, let's be honest.
Nobody thought Ryan Garcia was going to win this, but
that's the thing. Like, even people who really dislike Devin Haney were like, well, he at least wins.
Yeah.
A lot against good fighters. People who are, better than Ryan Garcia.
Yep.
Yeah, it just goes to show, like, how fragile I guess that can be. So it's still just a baffling one. I still just haven't got my head around it. I don't think I ever will.
You should watch it, though. If you're listening, you haven't seen it, once again, it's a very silly fight with a lot of action. So, like, you will not be bored. And it's just very, very silly. Definitely one for the record books. Worth seeing. All right. Well, let's take a break there. And when we come back, return to the apex after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, we're back, and looking at this Apex undercard. Which of these do you want to talk about, Phil?
Okay. Okay, let's actually talk about these. Yes, we got to talk about some of them.
All right, fine.
All right. I guess two of the ones that jump out. Let's do Pearce Onama, and let's do Yahya Henry.
Okay, great. Jonathan Pearce, David Onama. We started the show. You said to me, "Who's Jonathan Pearce?"
I said, and then you reminded me.
You know Jonathan Pearce. You know him from his hilarious loss to Joe Anderson Brito, which we celebrated at the Handies at the start of the year. When in his accent that, I'm sorry, it just can't sound anything but racist when he says the word boy.
No, 100%.
It's the accent, and it's just doesn't help. And he's on top of Joe Anderson Brito, and he's like, Joe Anderson Brito is cheating. He's putting his fingers in Pearce's glove, and Pearce complains to the ref, and Brito goes, la 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 la. Like, shut the fuck up. Let me cheat, you crybaby, you tattletale. And then Pearce says, well, get up and do something about it, boy. And then Brito chokes him out. Like a minute later. After getting up and doing something.
Very, very funny.
Very funny. I
don't even know what the funniest bit of it is.
Yeah, it adds to it.
It might even just be that.
it adds to it that Brito is cheating. Like, he is totally committing a foul when this hilarious sequence starts. And he's mad at Pearce for complaining about it. Like,
honestly, this seems like more people should just do it. How have more people not adopted this as like a defense against the other person calling fouls in the UFC?
Just blabber over them.
One's like, or like just mockingly repeat what they say. If they're like, he poked me in the eye, just be like, just like. Just try and make them out like they're the suck ass who's running to teach it.
I think that would be really effective, actually.
Right?
There's no way your average MMA fighter's ego could withstand that type of schoolyard taunting. Yeah, just make them out like they're a pussy for not being okay with you cheating. That's a good move, honestly.
You kicked me in the balls. So good.
Oh, Jesus. So anyway, that right there was the most fun moment of Jonathan Pearce's UFC career. He is otherwise your MMA native wrestler, who got finished by Joe Lozon in his UFC debut. You're thinking, oh, that must have been 8 years ago. No. To be fair, 2019 Joe Lozon, probably wasn't as bad as the last version of Joe Lozon we saw. Then again,
he was still pretty far down the slope.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I lie. It was the last version of Joe Lozon we saw. That was literally his last fight.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
Who even remembered Joe Lozon retired on a win over Jonathan Pearce? Joe Lozon had been beaten by Chris Gritzmacher in his previous fight. And then he knocked out Jonathan Pearce.
Let's go, J-Lo.
And otherwise he has just had a lot of really grindy, not particularly impressive fights. He wins, Most of the time, you look at the names in his record, and you're like, this guy must be pretty good. And I'm not saying he isn't good, but he is really a very like one note, pretty impotent fighter for the most part. Like one of the 2 finishes he's gotten in UFC, Makwan Amirkhani. Guess what happened in that fight?
I'm going to guess that Makwan Amirkhani got very tired.
Yeah.
After one round.
I don't think that's a result you can pin entirely on the finishing power of Jonathan Pearce. So, yeah, and now he's fighting David Onama, which I think this fight will be hideous.
It really will be, won't
This is,
it?
like, not necessarily not fun, but I think it will be a disgusting, grimy fight. Because Pearce is going to try to cling on to Onama for dear life. Onama is not going to come in equipped with any kind of game plan designed to stop that from happening. Indeed, he's going to engage in the wrestling and grappling willfully, as he does. He is going to gas, but he's not going to fall apart the way Makwan Amirkhani does. He's just going to keep doing crazy, powerful things sloppier and sloppier. I think this is going to be a gross fight to watch.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to agree with that. Onama's mostly been put into silly action fights against people who aren't going to try and grapple him, but going back to look at his fight against, I think, Mason Jones,
Yeah.
there isn't any indication that he's any good at wrestling, or that he's going to be, like, defensively, or that he's going to be, like, much better at it, because he hasn't really improved that much technically anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like when Mason Jones like locked up his hands on Onama by the cage, Onama just like started trying to punch him, other than, for example, trying to remove his hands.
Yeah. Classic mistake.
Yes. So he's probably going to get taken down a whole bunch. But then, like you said, like, Pearce is also just super hittable. Onama he's just physical enough to, I think, scramble out of a lot of those positions.
Yeah.
I was going to pick Onama. You know what? I was going to pick Pearce when I came in just for the wrestling and because Onama, like, looks really bad at wrestling, but I think he just might be
violent enough.
He just might be too potent for. I think that's just that's what Pearce's record looks like.
That's kind
just
of the dividing line.
Yeah, it's just like, is this person potent?
Yeah, there's a
And
couple
if they are,
of
he loses to him.
There's a couple of outliers, like Kai Kamaka is like a reasonably hard puncher, but he was really like, I don't know, just did not look in good form in that fight or his next two before getting cut by the UFC. So something was up with him. And then, yeah, like same with Omar Morales. That guy has some danger factor. But, yeah, you know, he's also just been like falling apart for the last several years and is really, really indecisive and low output and takes ages to get going. But then, yeah, if you try to find the common ground between like Joe Lozon and Joe Anderson Brito, very different fighters, but both of them absolute finishers. And I think Onama's a finisher, man. His fights are like routinely hideous. He makes horrible decisions. He just doesn't have any breaks, David Onama. Every single fight is a brawl. Whether the opponent wants one or doesn't, it just turns into a brawl. He just cannot. It's crazy because, like, when Onama first got to the UFC, I thought he looked like he had a ton of potential. Like, he's clearly a strong athlete. Mm-hmm. He's fast. He's powerful. And there were always these moments of him showing some nice, crisp boxing. But he just can't sustain it. He just loses his shit, and I don't know. Like, this is a guy, it would genuinely be good for him if he could become capital T technical. And as of yet, it does not look like he is capable of doing that. He just can't slow himself down. So, Pearce is probably a very smart pick because Onama got taken down 8 times and controlled for 9 minutes by Mason Jones. He got taken down 3 times by Nate Landwehr. He gets taken down by everyone. He also wins these fights. Or at least even I think he lost the Mason Jones one, but it was an absolutely stupid slobber knocker for all the times. And as you said, he is actually being a good athlete, being a guy who can't stop, he is actually innately a pretty good scrambler. And I just think that Pearce doesn't like when the opponent doesn't sort of accept that he's grinding them out. And I don't think Onama can accept it. I don't think he knows how. So I'll take Onama too.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, it's at least partially an optimism pick, but...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it does seem to be the dividing line. Just, can this person crack? And, because we talked on that one for a surprisingly long time, mostly about how this was funny, Victor Henry, Ronnie Yahya.
Yeah, that's the other one we selected of these terrible, terrible fights.
This mostly seems mean.
Yeah.
But you know what? Ronnie Yahya's recent record is actually surprisingly okay, which is, I suspect, one of those deceiving things where it's like, that's what this looks like, because this old fighter hasn't fought for quite a long time for a very good reason.
Yeah, he's he had one fight, actually, since 2021.
Yeah.
Which he got absolutely smoked by Montel Jackson. The last fight before that layoff was one in which Kyung Ho Kong was crushing him, but kept making comical strategic errors. Like, he was dominating Yahya on the feet, as most people do, and then just kept insisting on grappling with him. And that's the only reason that Ronnie won that fight, because he got gifted a bunch of control time, basically. Is Victor Henry one thing I'll say, Victor Henry's not as potent as Montel Jackson, for example, whose hands are the size of lunch boxes. But he is a pretty high output, accurate combination striker who, it just seems like he's just going to land a ton of punches on poor old Ronnie.
Yeah. If he was going to be super easy to take down and out wrestle, then Haney Barcelos would have done it to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
And yeah.
Ronnie will...
Yahya's getting close to 40 years old, and admittedly, he's always looked like he's 55.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like much of a change. But
Ronnie's one of those guys. He's gonna be like Teller from Penn and Teller. Like, he's gonna feel so happy when he gets to 70, and he just finally looks. Mm-hmm. He's gonna start looking young at a certain point.
Yeah,
Ronnie's gonna look exactly like this when he is 55, and it's all uphill from there, really, or downhill.
Yep.
It's downhill from there. I don't know what's the expression. It gets easier to look like Ronnie Yahya once you pass the age you've looked since you were 22.
Yeah. He is, because people are just going to be like, you look so young.
Great. You're 85 years old? No way. You don't look a day over 56. Yeah. One thing to say about Ronnie is that he does have a really annoying, sticky style of takedown and grappling. Like, you can never fully count it out that he will just panic his way into a low single leg and then clamber up onto the other person's back and drag them down. But you got to assume that even if that does happen, it's maybe a round of control for him, after which he probably gasses horribly. Just provided Victor Henry doesn't like fall into a front headlock or something, he can probably afford to give away an entire round early and then just use his pretty striking to take Ronnie apart down the stretch. So pretty simple one to break down, I think.
Yes. Victor Henry obviously returning after his groin kick loss. Well, not loss, but that groin kick ended his fight the last time against Javid Basharat, which I'm pleased to see that Basharat did lose his next fight. After he tried to imply that, like, Victor Henry was scared to be in there with Javid Basharat.
He kind of did the move that we were advising fighters to do earlier. Oh, I get kicked in the balls. Oh, my testicle rose up into my abdomen. Shut up, baby.
Yeah, but you shouldn't do it to the like refer to the officials. You should just do it directly to the fighter and do just. It was all dick and balls.
It was all dick and balls. I forgot about that. That was did we not commemorate that on the Handies? That was I'm
sure we did, right?
I don't know if we did. I don't think we did, but it was a serious moment.
It's the crack in his voice as he says it that makes it both heartbreaking and hilarious.
Anyway, good to see Victor Henry back. Tough luck for Ronnie Yahya, but Victor needs a win too. That's how it goes.
Yep.
All right. That'll do it for this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Thank you all so much for listening. We will be back next week to talk about a shockingly thin pay-per-view. I gotta be honest. And don't get me wrong. Alexandre Pantoja, Steve Erceg. It's the UFC's fault that you don't know who Steve Erceg is, that he probably needed one more win to really justify a title shot, and that they didn't place his admittedly very impressive UFC fights so far, like in more prominent places. They've been doing this to flyweight forever. They made Demetrius Johnson fight John Moraga, whose fight before that was literally like the first fight on the card. So they don't know what they're doing. It's the UFC's fault that you don't care about this. I'm telling you, it's a cool fight. I'm interested. Jonathan Martinez versus the returning Jose Aldo. I admit, I'm morbidly curious. The rest of the card, mostly dog shit. Really. But hey, Jack Shore, Joanderson Brito is on there. Brito's not going to have any fouls to yap about, but that looks like a compelling matchup. Another technician versus super athlete. So it's not completely bereft of quality fights. We are going to find at least 4 that are interesting enough to discuss next week. And until...
You know what I was just thinking?
Uh-huh.
Maybe this is some kind of like power struggle going on in the UFC, in like the matchmaking, because someone was like, you know what, we should have more flyweight main events. They're really fun and exciting. And someone else was just like, I'll show you.
Yeah, well, sure. Here's your flyweight main event.
I love big. I actually love the big beefy boys. I love Anthony Smith and I love Jairzinho Rosenstruik. So yeah, I'm going to give you your flyweight main events and I'm going to put them on top of the thinnest cards you've seen in your life.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. And then they're going to get mad at the flyweights for not drawing eyes, as they do. But it's a cool fight. I'm not upset about the matchup.
Nope.
It's good. Yeah, so we got that. Check out my Max Holloway breakdown on the finer points of face punching, by the way. Breakdown of his incredible, legendary performance against Justin Gaethje. And also, I'm working on a Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney write-up, where I'm going to talk a lot of shit about what Devin Haney did in that fight. So you'll be able to find that as well, facepunching.substack.com. And find us on Twitter at EvoGregJackson, at BoxingBush. One is Phil, the other is me. You decide which. Until next week, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. You came to one of the right places. This has been Heavy Hands.